Hello, Heartful Parent family. It is time for this week's bonus episode of the podcast. These little bonus episodes are my gift to you because, as you've heard me say, inevitably, time and time again, we were never meant to parent alone. And I know that all of us, myself included, have so many questions about parenting. In the work that I do and the many hats that I wear, one of my very favorite things is getting and answering questions from parents and getting to support you, you, on your journey. So each week I'm taking one real question from a listener or a subscriber to my newsletter and I'm diving in. So on that note, here we go with this week's question. This week's question is one that I really love, and it is this. How do I provide my children and my husband with what they need to thrive and succeed in life? I can't wait to dive into this question with you today because when I first read it, I kind of giggled a little bit because it's a parent not just asking about their children, but also asking about their parenting partner, their co-parent, their spouse, right? Their life partner, presumably. And it's so interesting that this, that we're asking about our partners as well. And I love it. I love it, love it. So let's dive into this. And the first thing that I want to say really comes back to the roots of positive discipline. As a side note, there's a lot of misinformation out there about what we mean when we talk about positive discipline. And it's been called all sorts of things: gentle parenting, positive parenting, kind parenting, the positive parenting movement, connected parenting, heartful parenting, right? You name it. It goes by a lot of different phrases or terms. And you'll hear people say, gentle parenting has ruined this generation of kids. Here's what I want to say to that as we dive into this today, because it's really relevant. I don't think positive discipline, as it was created, as it was intended to be applied, has done anything of the sort. It certainly has not ruined our children. In fact, I think it is the way to a more peaceful future. What has been damaging and dangerous, I think, is the misapplication of positive parenting. And in fact, I think it's just as dangerous, but in different ways, as sort of the previous wisdom, which was really authoritarian parenting, right? You will do what I tell you to do because I told you to do it. That kind of parenting where parents demand respect but don't give respect. We could dive in a separate episode as to why I think those are damaging for kids. But gentle parenting, when we slide too far into permissive, and we're all about gentle and kindness and love and all of those things, which are great, but we set no boundaries, we have no expectations, we make no requirements of our children, that's where we've gone wrong. And that's relevant because when we look at what do our children and our partners need to thrive and succeed in life, I'm going to bring us back to the roots of the positive discipline philosophy. And the positive discipline philosophy was really founded, or it's based in what we call Adlerian psychology. So Alfred Adler was a psychologist who was really a contemporary of Freud, but took a really different approach to the why and the how of, how we all function, or the reasons why we do the things that we do. And what Adler said is we all have these two fundamental needs: a sense of belonging and a sense of significance. Now, the way that I often talk about those things are, I like to think of it as the 4 C's, and different people have their own, 4 C's, but I think about it as connection, control, contribution. And recently I've been adding a 4th C, which is this idea of calm, restorative spaces that I think are really, really valuable to each and every one of us. And I think if we can infuse those things into our kids: connection, control, contribution, and calm spaces, they have the tools. Those are the ingredients with which to thrive. So I'm going to talk about those ever so briefly, keeping in mind that I'm not going to go on for hours about this, although I could. Connection is really that idea that we belong in the group that we're in. We feel deeply wanted, desired, needed, and that we fit, right? We fit in our families, we fit in our classrooms, we fit in our workspaces, that we belong. Control is the idea that we have some say, some degree of control over the outcome of something, that we have some decision-making power. And contribution is really the sense that we are genuinely needed, that we have a role to play, that we have a contribution to make. And that control and contribution really goes towards that feeling of significance that Alfred Adler and, sort of the more modern founders of positive discipline have relied on or have said, that we need. And then, as I mentioned, I like to add in that calm spaces, that we all need calm, restorative spaces when, our brains get dysregulated, or to prevent our brains from getting dysregulated. Now, there are a ton of tools that we can use for each of those, right? Connection, we can use things like special time with our kids. Family meetings. I'm a huge proponent of family meetings. And for anyone who's listened to the pod for any amount of time, you know that I did an episode on these pretty far back at the beginning, I think. Really the idea of letting our children feel seen. When they walk into the room, do we light up? Are we excited to see them? Are we happy that they're there? Right? All of those things help build and fuel connection. And our children need that. And our partners need that too. Partners need to know that we are interested in spending time with them, that we are interested in communicating with them, right, through meetings or, over dinner or whatever it might be, and that we truly see them for who they are and appreciate them for who they are. Control is, giving our kids and our partners some degree of autonomy and a degree that increases the older that they get. Right? Where they have decision-making power, where they get the ability, and this really is a gift. It doesn't sound like a gift, but where we give them the gift of letting them make mistakes and learning from those mistakes, letting them make the wrong decision and learning from that decision. Obviously not in situations where it would be catastrophic or like dangerous to their, to life or limb, but in most other cases. And not getting your homework turned in and not getting an A does not count as catastrophic, okay? We have to give our kids the opportunity to make those decisions for themselves and to scaffold support underneath them as they grow, and then we can gently pull the scaffolding away. Yes, we could talk about that in a lot more detail too. And then with contribution, we know that kids are doing fewer chores, having fewer obligations or fewer responsibilities around the home than ever before. And I think it's doing them a disservice. And the research backs me up on this. So we need to ask them to contribute. We need to make contribution to our family, to the mission of the family, to the home itself, not just something that would be a nice bonus, but that is actually a priority, something that we demand, that we expect of them, that it's part of the family culture. And yes, this goes for our partners too. So I want to touch briefly on that idea that this listener was asking about their husband as well. I'm going to work on the assumption that husband is an adult who is fully capable of managing himself. Ideally, and I recognize this is an ideal, ideally, our partners would come to us as whole people who already have the tools that they need to thrive and succeed in life. Ideally, they would have either gotten that from their family of origin, or they would have done the work on themselves and for themselves to get to that place. It is and should not be our job as spouses to give our partners the tools to help them thrive and succeed. We should be there to support them, to love them, to accept them, to fully see them for who they are. But I want to note that by the time we are adults, we are responsible for ourselves. And we are responsible to our families. And that includes all of us, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of employment status. We all have an obligation to ourselves to be the grown-ups that we need to be and to show up for our families. And if your partner is not showing up for you or your family in the way that they need to, in a way that feels equitable, notice that I didn't say equal, but equitable, then that is an issue that needs to be addressed in the context of that relationship, with therapy, with coaching, with the fair play method, with something to create perhaps more scaffolding, more tools, more information, perspective shift, whatever it might be. Well, I'm a big fan and a big believer that we should be there to support our partners, and just as they support us, but that really ultimately they are responsible for their own thriving and their own success, and that they should be helping us, right? Give those gifts to our children, the gifts of connection, right? Being deeply connected with their children, building their own relationships with our children, giving our children control and autonomy and decision-making power, all synonyms for one another there, and for requiring that our children contribute and play a role in the family. We should be working together, ideally with our partners, to do that. And that is how we all thrive and succeed in life. So as you're thinking about this, how to better support your children, go back to those spaces, connection, control, contribution. And once those are all met, also ask, have you helped your children find those spaces in themselves? It's not always a physical space, but the space in their own hearts, souls, minds to find that calmness, to reconnect. That's going to look different for every person. But that ability to restore ourselves, to rejuvenate ourselves, to go out in the world. And I think we each have those needs. They're just going to be different depending on which person we're talking to. There's so much more that we could dive into. This is a big, big question. But that's where I think we need to start. Connection, control, contribution, calm spaces. And of course, all of those are infused with love. I hope that's helpful. I hope that gets you started. If you need more support for this, you know where to find me. Take care. All right, listeners, thanks so much for coming along with me for this week's bonus episode. If you would like your question answered, drop me an email at Christy@theheartfulparent.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can also go to my website at theheartfulparent.com and sign up for my newsletter, where you receive the inside scoop on everything Heartful Parent, and it's delivered weekly to your inbox. Better yet, if you would like more answers to the parenting questions challenging you, and or you would just like to support my work here at the Heartful Parent, there is no better way to do that than to join the Heartful Parent Academy. Inside the Academy, you get direct access to me, to get all your questions answered at least 3 times a month. And the more members, the more access I will offer. So use coupon code PODCAST to try out your first month for only $7. You can find the join link on my website. I feel so incredibly grateful that you let me into your lives every week and now twice a week. And I'm also so grateful to those who support the work that I'm doing. I truly cannot do this without you. Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. I will see you next week.